Let's begin with a comment from Hearth and Home by Christina. A comment about Princess Catherine's exciting appearance at Wimbledon yesterday. This beautiful, poised and classy lady received a standing ovation when she entered, something that Meghan Markle will never achieve in her lifetime. This kind of recognition can only be had because of sheer class. I'm sure there is much screaming, clutching of faux pearls and dish shattering going on in the Olive Garden mansion. Well, thank you for your comment, Christina, my dear. And indeed, we had the extremely edifying and satisfying spectacle of Hollywood royalty lining up to applaud the Princess of Wales. This is the Duchess of Sussex's dream, but actually it's her worst nightmare happening in front of her eyes. Catherine doesn't have to rely on C-listers, D-listers, Z-listers, wannabes, other kinds of hustlers. We are talking the cream of the crop here, whether they're to your taste or not. The likes of Julia Roberts, our dear pretty woman. The likes of Julia Roberts, the likes of little Tommy Cruise. You know, bona fide Hollywood royalty, darling, lining up not just to applaud, but to applaud with great enthusiasm. Did you see little Tommy Cruise? He was like Alpha Penguin. Clap, 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 clap. And Julia, it was a tonic to see Julia, because as soon as the princess emerged like a fabled star, I mean, this is the star's star. Do you understand this, my dear? This is why it's so edifying. Without even trying, Kate Middleton, as she once was, now Catherine, Princess of Wales, doesn't have to do anything, my dear. Not even click the fingers. Just walks in to watch a tennis match. And the likes of Julia Roberts. The expression on Julia Roberts' face warmed the cockles of my heart, and I know it will warm the cockles of yours, so I'm gonna run it here. And you see, I mean, she's famous, isn't she? It's one of the reasons why she's a splendid actress in many of her pieces. She has the ability to give spontaneity to her expressions in a rather unguarded, very natural way. And you see exactly that as the princess walks in. She cannot contain absolute joy. And a member of royalty. And this is, you know, these are people who have seen it all, done it all, my dear. And who thrills them? Who delights them? Catherine. Ha! Yes, it's the power of royalty, my dear. Others can come and go. It is the power of royalty. Unmatched. Unmatched. And so absolutely satisfying. And I will hammer the point home. I will hammer the point home. Amazing. This was the second public appearance since her diagnosis, of course, and she received that standing ovation from the crowd, utterly naturally, together with Princess Charlotte, the 9-year-old firecracker that is third in line to the throne now. She is a firecracker, that girl, isn't it? Remember what I was saying about how little ones come out, the bairns come out already baked. A lot of what's in there is already baked at birth. And we saw it in Charlotte, didn't we, my dear? We saw the fire in her eyes. You could tell she was going to be a gung-ho enchantress, capturing all of our hearts with her fire. With her fire, that is the word, my dear. Ferocious, quizzical eyes, and she's a confident child. People have been speaking recently about how confident she was at the Taylor Swift concert, with Taylor and with Taylor's friends, wasn't it, who've been talking about what a confident child she is. Very talkative in there, quick-witted, and you saw it here at Wimbledon. The result, all three of them, the result of a loving home with stable, fabulous parents. And she got the confidence. George is slightly more reserved, but even he is coming out of his shell more and more because William allows him to be him. He isn't shy or backwards in coming forwards with affection for his son, as we'll see later. But Catherine's smile, that smile, I mean, you know, Julia Roberts was in the crowd, my dear, and we all know she's got that famous megawatt smile. It just makes you melt. But if there is competition for her, then I've got to say it would be Catherine, because Catherine does it and, oh, everyone goes absolutely crazy for her. That wonderful smile, as if nothing ever happened. Wonderful, isn't it? Putting so many of those daft conspiracies to shame. She was there as a spectator, of course, as well as in her capacity as patron of the All England Croquet and Tennis Club, and one of the duties of which is to present the trophies, as she did, very elegantly. In fact, the Duchess of Gloucester... Oh! My dear, who dares call me while I'm recording? Oh, it always makes me shake. Excuse me, dear. The Duchess of Gloucester, I heard, was actually on standby yesterday if she happened to have been required, but Catherine came through, of course, in regal purple. What did you think of that? She was wearing this lilac number by Sophia. Well, officially it's described as lilac. I don't see lilac, I see purple. But anyway, it's the Cecilia or Cecilia, I'm not sure how these people pronounce it, but the Cecilia lilac midi dress with a twisted bodice. Very fetching. And Pippa Matthews wore peony print. Princess Charlotte was in polka-dotted chiffon by Guess Girls, and she wore these rose-tinted lunettes, these Ray-Bans actually. They were rather cool, weren't they? She was looking extremely chic. And Catherine's sunglasses were the Victoria Beckham squares. The King has written privately to Donald Trump, Buckingham Palace has said, in the wake of the assassination attempt a couple of days ago, which was rather shocking, wasn't it? And it was delivered on Sunday through the UK Embassy in Washington, D.C. The contents of the letter remain private. But the King and his family know all too well the dangers that public figures face. We see physical protests, we've seen them for centuries, let alone decades, which I've never found amusing or funny. I've always found it threatening, nasty behaviour, whether or not you like someone or not. There is no need to make a protest in such a way. Turn your back on somebody. Make a peaceful protest. I'm afraid that throwing anything at all at any person, whether it's an innocuous substance or not, is an act of violence. It is an act of violence and a threatening act that I don't approve of. So they know all about that. There was an attempt made on Charles himself, I believe, wasn't there, in Sydney? This is going back to 1994. Even though blanks were fired, I believe that there was still a threat to Prince Charles's life as he was then, and he was very much praised for being absolutely cool as a cucumber. If you think that Mr. Trump acted coolly, check out Prince Charles, or check out the late Queen when she was riding Burmese at Tripping the Colour, and again some blanks were fired by some interloper. Cool as a cucumber, she got Burmese under control, just like that, my dear, just like that, and kept calm and carried on with the day as if nothing had happened. And of course the Queen's cousin, the late Queen's cousin, Lord Mountbatten, was assassinated. Our Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, in the 80s, there was an attempt on her life at the Brighton bombings in 84, was it? And I think 5 government officials died in that. They missed Maggie, but they got others, and about 30 were injured. So we know all these political, I suppose you could say, or royal acts of violence goes on, and it's extremely sad. There are some real nutters out there, My prayers are for the family of the former Pennsylvanian volunteer firefighter, Chief Corey Comparatore, who died shielding his family. That really got me. How very sad. And it would be the same whether it was for a Biden event or a Trump event. It doesn't matter. I don't give a shit who it's for. But really heartbroken to think of that. Shielding, I think, his 2 daughters he was there. Just, it looked like a fine gentleman, I've got to say. Granted, I'm only going from the photographs, but you know anyway. Firefighters are a special breed of men and women. They really are. And I remember my encounter when I got a ring stuck on my finger. Do you remember, my dears, a couple of years ago? I told you about it in a broadcast, and I spent the night with a troop of firefighters who eventually got it off for me. And my. Oh, what a handsome bunch they were. But even outshining their good looks, and they really were charismatic, wonderful, sexy gentlemen. They really were gentlemen. They were gents. So this tells me something about the character of the man. I think it's absolutely heartbreaking for nothing. And if we've got any firemen out there in the fruit basket, then pop up and say hello, my dear. Pop up any time. Let me know how you're doing. The others, Charlotte got to have her fun at the tennis, but it was George's turn for the football, and Charlotte and Louis had to make do with watching from home, and they were pictured in their England shirts with the message from the Waleses: England, your teamwork, grit and determination were an inspiration to all of us, young and old. Congratulations to Spain, W and C, because England lost. I believe they made the final and they lost. They always lose, they always lose. And there were lots of trolls and critics online, I hear tell, asking why Prince George was cruelly forced into wearing a suit to watch the match instead of a football top. And these people really are imbeciles, aren't they? They don't have much going on up there, and they're mischief makers for the sake of it. First of all, and most importantly, does George look at all unhappy with the arrangement? Does the lad strike you as at all unhappy about the fact that he's wearing a suit? No doubt he's the envy of his friends, by the way. There he is, with special seats watching the match that everybody wants to watch. Not me, but everybody else. Does he look at all disappointed? I don't think so, my dear. Secondly, he'd stand out like a sore thumb because he's standing amongst a group of mainly men in suits. And he'd probably feel like a bit of a twat standing there in something different and a football top, wouldn't he? And thirdly, although I understand that Charlotte and Louis were pictured in England tops, I believe they were England tops in the photograph, George's father is our next monarch, and in time, Prince George will reign as sovereign of the United Kingdom, and that includes Northern Ireland and Scotland and Wales. And he will also likely one day become Prince of Wales. So picking out England to support in isolation could possibly be thought of as bad form. Now, I'm not sure if William has ever been photographed in an England top. It may prove to be. Perhaps George will one day. But I believe that it was a rather sensible decision for two heirs of the throne not to be shown branding themselves with too much favouritism. And the fourth point to make is that they quite simply looked immaculate in their suits. It made me feel proud to see our heirs to the throne looking so smart, smartly turned out. The two boys on this occasion, the two gals at Wimbledon. Wonderful. Wonderful to take pride in our representatives, the heads of state. In fact, at that football match, I wish the entire crowd wore suits. I wish it was de rigueur for football. I might be a little bit more easygoing about football if it was to alter the atmosphere, because clothing changes the atmosphere. And you can be just as passionate, just as exercised as you see with William and George, but one doesn't have to descend into hooliganism. New portraits have been released with the King and Queen looking resplendent in blue for confirmation of their autumn tour to take place in October, and these will include royal visits to Australia and Samoa. These have been confirmed now, and they will attend the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, but sadly they are going to have to omit New Zealand, as was expected. They were going to go for 3 weeks originally, but that's been cut down to 10 days. Limited activities on doctors' orders as the King continues his treatment for cancer, which we can understand, can't we? And speaking of all cancer this and cancer that, my mummy, as you know, she is a cancer survivor, but she had another little scare a few months ago, not as serious. She's been all clear for a long time now, but she had, what's it called, these things, a basal cell carcinoma. Did I mention it to you? I can't remember. I don't think I did, because I don't like to speak family illnesses into being. Do you understand that? I was very much like that when my mother was diagnosed with cancer years ago. I didn't tell anybody, not out of shame or anything other than the fact that I don't like to speak its existence, you know, apart from between us intimately. I don't like to do that and put it into the ether. I think there's something to be said for it, which was proved to be the case in this circumstance, because she had this, I never actually saw it, to be honest, a sort of soreness, a sort of redness round about the nose and the eye. I can't remember exactly where it was. I don't actually remember her pointing it out to me. I never saw it at its angriest, but she had a spot, went for a checkup of this soreness, and they told her it was this very common thing, isn't it? Basal cell carcinoma, very common, she went on to find out. Lots of her friends had it, and they're usually removed very easily, and they don't cause much trouble, so she wasn't overly concerned. But then we have since discovered, only recently, that her doctor had actually thought that it looked quite nasty. Quite nasty, they were the words that he used. But the appointments she had to get rid of it were cancelled several times due to staff shortages and staff sicknesses. And Mummy being Mummy, she had a couple of holidays booked as well, which she didn't want spoilt. And they kind of clashed, and then she didn't want to be in the sun while they were healing or while it was getting bad. So we had all this topsy-turvy stuff going on. She didn't know whether or not to bite the bullet and go private and get it done that way. Well, in the end, she went for another checkup. It's been going on all these months. Should have been taken out months ago. She went for another checkup this week, and miracle of miracles, it's confounded them. Vanished. Totally vanished without trace. I mean, she could sense it. She couldn't really feel it anymore. But they told her totally vanished without trace, and they are absolutely stumped. They've never seen anything of the like before. That's when they told her that actually they thought that it had something nasty about it. Nothing can be found, and the only thing Mummy can put it down to is CBD miracle oil, you know, that cannabis oil that people use. And I'm not one, as I've told you, I understand that people use it medicinally and have great results. Some people don't. I've googled this particular sort of oil, and some have had miraculous sort of healings. Others say it does nothing, it's placebo. Others have said it makes things worse. So I'm certainly not recommending it. But Mummy says that she dabbed cannabis oil on it, CBD oil, because she gives parties. Actually, coincidentally, she gives them once a year to raise money for cancer research, this kind of thing. Macmillan, I think, she gives a party at home, and she has all kinds of people to come and give their offerings, their wares, to sell whatever it is, cakes, baby socks, a vast array of things. And one of the friends of her friends, actually an old friend of mine, sells these CBD offerings and cannabis oils and stuff. She bought one of those, and she ended up popping it on. And she's popped it on a few different things. She burned her hands in the kitchen, and she popped it on as a blister was forming. It was painful. She says she popped it on 30 seconds after doing it, and it ameliorated. The whole thing ameliorated. It's happened a couple of times. So I've told her, I've got my birthday coming up this month, as you know, and I told her, because I never want gifts or anything these days, my dear. I said, don't bother with gifts. And she always gets something, and it's usually something I don't really need. So I said to her, oh, get me some of that, and I'll try some of that. So I'll have to let you know how it goes, my dear. As I say, not recommending it. I'm the last one to approve of cannabis and marijuana. I lived with the stoner once. Cannabis, this, marijuana, that. Aside from the fact that it stank, absolutely stank. I hate the smell of cannabis. Some love it. I hate it. I hate it. Apart from that, he, like anybody I've known that does it long term, ended up with the brain fried. The brain fried. I've seen it a million times. It's a bit of a slow burner. But, you know, it was a one-off treatment. Well, who knows? I'm digressing. So let's switch to Jersey. Jersey, because, Jersey's a beautiful place. I've only been there once. But stunning, stunning place. And today their Majesties arrived there for a day of engagements, and they're going to be travelling to Guernsey, I think, tomorrow. And the historic relationship between the Channel Islands and the royal family stretches back for centuries. The Duke of Normandy, as the king is sometimes called when he is on the Channel Islands, arrived in soggy St Helier, and St Helier can be such a sunlight dappled glen, really beautifully. and usually so at this time of year. But it was rain, 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 although I have to say that it looked a little bit like my idea of bliss to see the little tea rooms lined up there with the drizzly rain outside. Ooh, imagining nursing a lovely cosy cup of coffee or hot chocolate in there while it's raining outside. Just delicious. And at the Royal Square there was a special sitting of the States Assembly and sitting of the Royal Court. And the States Assembly is the island's parliament, consisting of 49 elected members. Queen Camilla enacted a remarkable decloaking. She flipped off that cloak. Did you see? I don't know what that was all about, but I could tell they were trying to contain their giggles when old Charlie boy was looking at her. That happens quite a bit with them, doesn't it? I think they get the giggles rather a lot and try to suppress them, especially now that he's king. They know they can't get away with getting the giggles and corpsing too much. But yes, if I was a royal, that would be my hallmark, corpsing and getting the giggles at absolutely everything when you're supposed to be being sombre. And I know that I would be laughing my head off at the most inopportune and inappropriate moments. It was here that King Charles II was proclaimed king before being recognised king anywhere else, after the martyrdom of King Charles I. So our King Charles III has a historical form with the islands, and it's worth remembering that the wet spells are actually why our countryside is so lush and verdant. So hopefully that will be some comfort to you. We are blessed with seasons here in the kingdom, but often they do go a bit haywire, as we're seeing this July. Never mind, never mind. The Jersey cows were there, and actually they performed for the Queen. They performed a rather indelicate act for the Queen. Actually, I'm not sure. Surely you need a bull to perform that sort of act, so I'm not sure if these were two female cows. Perhaps they were scissoring. King Charles was presented with colourful, locally laid duck eggs, and these were actually taking the place of two dead mallards, because the late Queen Liz used to be presented with two dead ducks upon her arrival into Jersey, on a silver tray no less. And this was part of an ancient tradition stretching back to the Middle Ages, paying homage to the role of the monarch as the Duke of Normandy. But they decided that perhaps it wouldn't fly so much in this day and age. A bit of a shame to break with tradition, but the duck eggs do the job just as fine. As for Prince William's polo match, well, I'll let you enjoy some of the images from that polo match, but what a fine specimen he is. Astride his steed, batting things about, the strong thighs, the strong musculature of our prince compares very favourably to that of his weedy brother, doesn't it, my dear? And Prince William raised over £1 million by taking part in the Royal Charity Polo Cup at Windsor for the 13th time. And Kensington Palace said each year the polo match raises £1 million for deserving charities, and that is the driver of why the Prince of Wales takes part. To date, the Prince playing polo has raised an incredible £13 million for charities that the Prince and Princess support. That was very nicely put, apart from the fact that they described it as incredible £13 million. So this is just a note to the writing teams at Kensington Palace. No incredible is needed. You don't need to tell us it's incredible. You don't need to interject or superimpose that context. It is not royal. Leave the praise to others. A trifling note, but one that I feel is important. Don't pat yourselves on the back. These are Waleses, not Sussexes. We don't want to veer into self-congratulatory territory, my dear. These things creep in. They creep in. They've raised an incredible £13 million for charities. Let the press tell us that they've raised an incredible amount. We don't want you, I say you, the Wales' team, telling us that you're incredible. That's not cricket. It's certainly not royal. But indeed it is a wonderful undertaking and a very worthwhile cause. And so many charities of worthwhile causes are going to be benefiting from that match. As we were benefiting too, weren't we, my dear, from the eye candy. And some other eye candy came in the form of the most delicious confections of Lady Sarah Chatto and her love, Dan Chatto. Because yesterday it was the 30th anniversary of their wedding, which is cause for celebration, isn't it, my dear? 30 years, the year of the pearl. It was 1994 when they tied the knot, 14th of July, at St Stephen Walbrook Church, And oh, those photographs are worth looking at again, because that palette was one of pure joy and of romance, wasn't it, my dear? Raspberry ripple dipped in white cream. And it was really rather unusual because the bridesmaids were clad in white as well, weren't they? You don't see that very often, do you? Zara was one of them, Phillips as she was then, Tyndall as she be now. Jasper Conran designed the gown with the corseted bodice, and it reminds me of my exercise books at school, you know, when one would doodle over one's exercise books when one was supposed to be studying. Well, all of my sketches and all of my doodles were of ladies in ball gowns with the V's that go down, just as Lady Sarah is wearing here, the little V's that come down from the bodice, and then great big sort of puffy ball gown skirts. So it would be a thing, and then pooh. I'm sure that doesn't surprise you very much, does it, my dear? Oh, and then I used to do a sort of lattice design, crisscrossing all over the bodice. Got them everywhere, my dear. And then two little pointy toes, two little triangles hanging out the bottom in their stiletto heels. Oh, daydreaming, daydreaming. And here we are. This is what we end up with later. The late Queen wore coral to that wedding, and she did it brilliantly. You don't see much coral these days, do you, my dear? Let's bring a bit of coral back. I've worn it here on the broadcast. Can make one a bit queasy, though. Got to get it right, and she did. The late Diana wore pearls. It was nice to see her nice, and I can't wait to see you next time, my dears. Flood the comment section with your fruity thoughts, my dear. I can't wait to read them. And if you enjoyed the show, my tip jar is in the description box, and I thank you most sincerely. I'll see you next time, my dears, for a cosy catch-up. Have a lovely evening, take care, and toodle pip.